So here we are for our old school practice myths debunked. Let me pull up my slides real quick and we'll get started. And like I said, there's a ton of information here, so I'm going to go kind of fast. As I'm going, I'm hoping that there will be time for questions at the end, so feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat, and we can hopefully have time to catch those at the end. And let me make sure of one other thing. Perfect. So, the first question that I have is does it really take a lot of time to play something confidently? So this is a concerto that I did with the Colorado State University Pueblo band where I teach back in February. And this is I'll probably do just the first page or so, or just the first half a page, but you can see it's kind of complicated music. Playing a concerto, and the really fun thing for this is I actually very diligently tracked my practice time on this because I was counting it as recruiting hours for my university job as well. So I actually know exactly how long I spent practicing this to get it to this level. So be thinking about that as you're listening. Awesome. So the question is, does it take a lot of time to play confidently? And I think it's probably doesn't take as much as you think. So if you're thinking about a number of how many hours that took to learn that piece from scratch, never having played it before, to that performance, it took me in the ballpark of 15 hours of practice, 15 hours of practice. So that may have been very close to what you were thinking. It may be way less than what you were thinking. It might be more than what you were thinking, but that's honestly how long it took me. And yes, I have years and years of experience, and that all helps, of course. But if you're practicing right, you can play actually very complicated stuff very confidently if you are doing it the right way and being efficient. So the reason why you need to sort of reimagine your practice, and that's kind of the theme for today, is reimagining your journey and coming up with sort of a better idea of how to do things, is because old teaching is a little bit outdated. There's all kinds of ideas that have been thrown out there and thought of for years and years, of things like, oh, you have to be really talented, you have to practice for hours and hours and hours. There's this idea of this 10,000 hour rule, which we'll talk about, that would suggest like if you want to do something well, you have to do it for at least 10,000 hours before you're doing it well. And a lot of those ideas are really just outdated. And yes, doing a million repetitions of something will probably get you pretty good, but it's by far not the most efficient way of doing it. There's also this kind of mythos of the talented musician, where some people are just talented, some people can do things, and some people don't. And there's this kind of idea that you have just a set natural ability, and if you spend an amount of time developing that natural ability, then you'll be even better, and just some people have more potential than others, which I think is completely untrue. I think it's much more about the dedication of time and the quality of time that you're putting into it, of course. And the really fun one is our brains are really bad at judging our learning. There's this idea of this kind of illusion of mastery, or this fluency illusion that happens and is talked about in science, where there's actual studies proving that we way overestimate how comfortable we are with something and how well we know something. The fluency illusion is also very fascinating. If you think about learning something from a textbook or any kind of traditional learning, you sort of read the passage. And the idea is if you can read the passage multiple times and you become really fluent with what the passage is saying, then you know what's going on and you've learned the material in that chapter of the textbook. But that's not actually the case. You've learned the words in that textbook really well, but you can't actually apply it to anything. So it creates this illusion of mastery where just because you're fluent in the idea and you've said the words lots of times doesn't mean you actually know it. Same thing goes for playing the clarinet, where we're wiggling our fingers. You can wiggle your fingers over a passage many, 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 many times, but that doesn't actually mean you know what's going on in that passage, or you can do it consistently and confidently for a performance. So that brings us to myth number one, that the more you practice, the better you'll play. So we've all heard the idea of practice makes perfect, right? And hopefully by this point in the sort of culture, we've all also heard the idea that that's not really true, that practice doesn't make perfect. There's also this idea of perfect practice makes perfect, which I think is a little bit more accurate, but also not that great because then it puts the pressure on us to practice perfectly every time we practice. And I think we can learn a lot from mistakes. And if we always have the pressure to always be perfect, then it's not very fun ever. So a much better saying, I think, is practice makes permanent. And that's really, really what the fact of it is what we do, we get better at. And the thing that makes this interesting and important is it's different for our conscious brain versus our subconscious brain. Our conscious brain can play through a passage and say, oh, that was the wrong rhythm, that's the wrong accidental, that's the wrong fingering, etc. And our conscious mind knows that. Our subconscious mind doesn't. And our subconscious mind is the part that's in charge of wiggling our fingers. If you think about it, when you go to pick up a water bottle or go to type or go to do anything with your motor movements, walk across the room, you don't have to think, okay, now I'm going to walk across the room. Okay, how do I stand up? Which muscles do I fire to stand up? That's all happening in the subconscious. And that's true for our clarinet playing as well. It all happens in the subconscious for the finger movements. So we have this slight disconnect between our conscious mind wanting to play this beautiful line of music with the right fingerings, accidentals, rhythms, all the stuff. But our subconscious mind doesn't know what's right and wrong. So it just gets better at doing whatever you happen to be doing. This is why if you've played through a piece and forgot to look at the key signature and you were playing F naturals instead of F sharps, it suddenly becomes very difficult to put those F sharps in because the subconscious mind has programmed in the F naturals already. There's a very cool sciencey term that there's studies about in around this too that's called overlearning. I think overlearning's a slightly misleading name for it because it's not what I would necessarily think. But what this version of overlearning actually is this idea that you must do more correct reps than incorrect reps by 50 to 100%. So what this means is as we're sort of solidifying our subconscious brain soup that doesn't know what it wants to do, as we're solidifying that, it will more automatically do whatever you've done 50 to 100% more of. So in the example of the F natural versus the F sharp, if we're playing F natural 5 times, but it's supposed to be an F sharp, then we have to do it with an F sharp 8 times to kind of override that and build the new path in our subconscious, which I think is fairly intuitive. We want to do more reps correctly than reps incorrectly to learn it properly, right? But the real key to this, and when I first learned about overlearning, the thing that stuck out to me was not the fact that we have to do more correct reps than incorrect reps, but the percentage of it being specifically 50 to 100% more, because that gives us the context that for every incorrect rep that we do, we have to do 50 to 100% more correct reps, which adds a ton more time to everything that we're doing. If you think about it of, okay, I can do something wrong twice and then 3 times correct, and I'm more or less good to go. then that's 5 total reps that you have to do on something. But if you think about how we normally practice, and I call this the pointless practice trap, where we play something and we do it wrong, and we're like, oh, nope, that was wrong. I'm going to do it again and kind of hope that it gets better. Then you keep doing that cycle of doing, oh, that was a bad rep. I'll do it again real quick and it'll fix itself. Oh no, it didn't fix itself. That's 2 bad reps. Okay, I'll do it again. It'll probably get better this time. Oh, that's 3 bad reps now. And the weird thing too, I don't know if there's a scientific term for this, but it is so clear in my students and even my own practice too, where as we make more mistakes, we're like, oh, I just gotta keep doing it more. And we start doing reps faster also. And before we know it, we've done like 10 incorrect reps, which means then we have to do 15 in a row good reps and correct reps before it starts to solidify correctly. So the real power of overlearning is not doing more correct than incorrect. It's minimizing the amount of incorrect reps. So it's not about more or just doing more. It's about doing better reps. And I think the way to do this is you have to start by really knowing how the music goes. And I think that's one of the most overlooked steps because we all love playing our clarinet and we get a new piece and we want to go, okay, I'm going to play through this piece and see how it goes. And that's just putting bad reps in the tank and getting that subconscious thinking, okay, yeah, it is an F natural rather than an F sharp. So instead of jumping into it with the clarinet right away, start with really knowing how the music goes. Listening to recordings is a great way to do this. Audiating through the music, so you're just looking at the music and hearing it in your head as accurately as you can. Clapping and counting rhythms before you even play it on the clarinet. All of that can be so very, very valuable. And it will feel very daunting to be like, even a 1 page etude, I have to know how this whole thing goes before I even play it on the clarinet. That's so overwhelming. That's not the case. You can do literally one measure at a time, but make sure whatever it is, you know how it goes really well before you start playing it. Second, be very picky immediately in your playing. So don't say, okay, I'm gonna play through this and I'll just kind of like run through the notes and make sure my fingers know where they're going for the notes. And then I'll get the rhythm later and maybe eventually closer to the performance, I'll try to put in the dynamics and the articulations and things like that. I think that's one that a lot of us are very guilty of, and I think it comes from a well-meaning place of band directors trying to get a whole group of high schoolers to try to play a concert together, but I think it's very detrimental in actual practice. If you think about it, if you do like I'm going to get the notes first, and then closer to the performance, I'll start doing dynamics. You have tons and tons and tons of reps in there without dynamics. So you're going to have to do tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of reps with dynamics to get that overlearning to stick. So right away, be very picky. These 4 things, I call this the 4 opportunities for improvement, or kind of the reason system for practicing, with reasons being an acronym of RSNS. So the idea here is these are the things that need to be there from day one. If you're ever having a hard time where you play something and you think, well, that was pretty good, I don't really know how to make it better, ask yourself, well, was the rhythm actually really perfect? Was the sound exactly what I want? Did I play the right notes, but also did I play the right notes confidently and feel good about where my fingers were going? And then did I do it with good style and good character and expression and emotional energy through the dynamics and articulations and tempo and all that stuff as well? These 4 things can also be what you sort of use to figure out how the music goes in the first place as well. So ultimately, when it comes to practicing, it's about doing less but better. Smaller chunks, get really clear on how it goes, do as minimal incorrect reps as possible. It's okay to do some incorrect reps. Just know you're going to have to do 50% more correct reps to get it to solidify properly. But doing less but better is the way to go. So it's not the more you practice, the better you will play. The truth is, the better you play in practice, the better you will play always. Awesome. Moving on to myth 2. Doing a lot of repetition helps to build your muscle memory. But what really even is muscle memory, right? The idea of muscle memory, the sort of colloquial idea, is being able to do something automatically, especially in a high pressure moment. And we've all had this feeling of in a performance where we're thinking about something else and we're sort of spacing out, but our fingers are still doing what they need to. And you're like, oh, thank goodness for my muscle memory taking care of that. But spoiler alert, there is no memory in your muscles. It's subconscious memory is what it is, and it's motor memory. So it's not that your muscles are doing it for you. It's still your brain doing it. It's just not the conscious part of your brain. So it's important to remember that practice is about training the brain, not the muscles. And this is where we can fall into the trap of, oh, I just need to do a lot of repetitions and I can do a lot of mindless repetitions. And I have this technical passage and I'm just gonna kind of finger through it mindlessly while I'm watching TV or doing something like that. And that could be useful to do occasionally, but purely doing reps, especially mindless reps, are not going to increase your brain muscle. It might increase your finger muscles, but our fingers don't need to be that strong to press down a clarinet key. So we don't really need strength in our muscles. However, we do need to train the brain muscle. So thinking about this analogy of the brain as a muscle, which isn't exactly how it works, it's not quite the same, but it's similar enough. Ask the question of yourself, how long would it take to get like strong, good biceps if you were only curling 5 pound weights? And if you always only curled 5 pound weights at the gym, maybe the first day, especially for someone like me who never works out, it might be hard the first day. But by a week of doing that, like you're gonna be moving that 5 pound weight, no problem. And then it's going to be like millions of reps before you get much stronger in your arm. But if we actually had a well-planned workout routine, then it would get better. And if we think about what a well-planned workout routine might be, maybe we start with 5 pound weights to build up to something comfortable, and then we would increase the weights. And then we would do different exercises to increase the other muscles around that to support that stronger muscle better. And we wouldn't just do curls, we would do other things. And again, I don't work out, so I have no idea what those other things might be, but we would do other exercises and things like that. And we want to do the same thing for our brain. So if you have your clarinet handy, we can work at a little passage here with some of this idea. So this is two measures from Debussy's Premier Rhapsody that are a little bit of a finger twister, but not so hard that I think most people, if you're comfortable with your chromatic scale, at least you could probably sight read this. But we do have to ask that question first. How does it go? How do we get it correct? Because if we don't get it correct in the first place, then every bad repetition we do, we're going to have to unlearn later. So looking at this, the first step I would do is not throw my fingers at it because with the key signature and the accidentals and a C flat in there, like there's no way I'm just sight reading that correctly. But I'm going to take a second to think about it, and I'm going to look at just the first beat of 16th notes and see A, B flat, B, C. Okay, that's a chromatic scale. And then the next beat, B flat, C flat, which is B natural. And then we go to C, and then D flat. Oh, that's also a chromatic scale. And then the next one, C flat, C natural, D flat, D, also a chromatic scale. Next one, C natural, D flat, D, E flat, also a chromatic scale. Okay, now I understand what this is. It's just 4 beats of a chromatic scale. So I know my chromatic scale really well. So I can do a chromatic scale starting on A for 4 beats, chromatic scale starting on B flat for 4 beats, chromatic scale starting on B for 4 beats, chromatic scale starting on C for 4 beats. Oh, and if you look at that, A, B flat, C, that's also going up chromatically. So it's just 4 notes up a chromatic scale, up a chromatic step, 4 notes up. This may be very similar. Let me make sure my original sound is on. There we go. This is very similar to a pattern you may do in a major scale, where you do the first 4 notes of the major scale, start on the second one, go up 4 like this. That's probably a familiar pattern. That's what this pattern is, but going chromatically. So let's start by just getting that correct. And we're going to break it down into small chunks so that we can do that really confidently correct. So let's do just the first beat, always going to the second beat. We always want to land at a downbeat to kind of complete the musical idea. So we're going to do 1 E and a 2. Let's try that. Ready? Go. One more time. Ready? Go. Good. Hopefully that's relatively comfortable and we don't have enough time to like really get it correct, but you get the idea, and we could go through and do that 1 beat at a time. 1 E and a 2, 2 E and a 3, or 1 in this case, 1 E and a 2, 1 E and a, and then If I remember right, there's a rest on the downbeat, but it would be nice if it went to a downbeat. But that's step one of our sort of practice process. We have to get that really comfortable and correct. Then we need to build the muscle. So just getting it correct is kind of lifting the 5-pound weight, which takes a second to get going. The way that we build the muscle is through contextual interference and flow. Contextual interference is the fancy scientific term, which basically just means make sure that you're thinking about it and keep the brain engaged while you're practicing. And that engagement of the brain is what leads to flow, and flow is what leads to optimal learning. So if you were to just do this on repeat as ad nauseum, you would eventually get there, but that would be like lifting the 5-pound weight for 1,000,000 repetitions. Instead, we can increase the weight by changing how we play it. One of the most popular ones of these is practice rhythms, which you're probably familiar with, where you do combinations of long and short. So doing something like that would be good. I haven't practiced this enough to get it correct, so I played a wrong note, so I should be still in the getting it correct phase, but you get the idea of doing those kinds of practice rhythms. Let's try that real quick. So we're going to do long, short. Long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short. And nice and slow. Maybe a little slower than I just sang. Long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short, 2. Ready, go. And then we can flip that around. Short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long. Try that. Ready, go. So that's an example of practice rhythms, which you're probably very familiar with. And this is where they can become a little bit of a trap, where those practice rhythms, as you get comfortable with them, will start feeling like the 5-pound weight again. So then we need to change it and increase the difficulty again and get our mental engagement increased again. So if that gets feeling easy, then you have to get creative about how you can interfere with the context more to make it even harder. One way to do that is maybe you do beat 1 and then skip to the next beat 1, go back to beat 2, and then go to the next beat 2. You can get really creative with this. There's infinite ways to create contextual interference and get your brain engaged more. So I'm not going to go into all of them, but the key to good practice at this point, once you know how it goes and once you can do it comfortably correct, then you have to keep the brain engaged. And if you feel like, oh, this is kind of difficult, and you feel like you're relearning it again, that's great. So whatever you can do to mix it up, to make it feel like it's something brand new, that means you're learning, and that means it's getting in there stronger. So contextual interference is all about keeping the mind engaged. And that's myth 2. Just doing a lot of repetition helps build your muscle memory? Nope. The memory is not in the muscles, the memory is in the brain. So keeping the brain really engaged helps the practice to stick better in your long-term memory. Going on to myth 3, more practicing is the path to confident performance. This is a good one where famous last words are, if you can do it 100 times correct, then it will go well in the performance. That's great wishful thinking, and I wish it were true, because then you could just get in your 100 repetitions and then you'll be good to go. But even those parts that you've practiced ad nauseum, time and time and time and time again, sometimes still fall apart in the performance, right? And have little issues in them. So it's not just about doing repetitions. The real requirements to perform confidently is ultimately you need to trust that you can play how you want it to go. So first, you need clarity on how you actually want it to go and how it should go. Is it an F sharp or an F natural? Make sure that that's really clear. Then make sure that you can comfortably do that correctly so that it doesn't feel on edge of, well, I can kind of do it, but not all the time. Feel really, really comfortable with it. And then number 3 is the confidence that you can do that consistently on the first try in any situation. And that's the real key to things, is that we often practice in such a way where we can do it correct sometimes, but we don't have confidence that we can consistently do it correct, especially on the first try in any situation. What that comes down to in the kind of brain mechanics is about pulling the information out of long-term memory and pulling the dexterity and whatever it is you need to do out of your long-term memory at the drop of a hat. So we need to make sure first that it's in long-term memory really well, and then make sure that we can get it out of long-term memory. So this first one of getting it in long-term memory is in encoding, or is also sometimes called consolidation. They're similar neuroscience ideas. One of the best things to do for encoding, to get the information in there really well, is the testing effect. This is like when you're reading the passage of the textbook, instead of just reading it and saying, okay, I know what the words are, so I'm good to go. Instead, you want to test yourself on it. So you read it, make sure you understand that as much as you can, and then later, after you've had some time to forget, see if you can remember how that goes and test yourself. And when you test yourself, it convinces your brain to hold on to that information. Our brains are inundated with tons of information all day, every day. And if it tried to hold all of that in long-term memory, every single thing that we engaged with, we would blow up after like a week of living. So our brain naturally doesn't hold on to everything, which we should be thankful for. However, we need to convince it to hold on to some stuff. And the testing effect is a great way to do that. If you're testing yourself of, okay, this is the information I was working with, like, what do you remember about that brain? Then the brain will think, okay, apparently we want to hold on to this, so we'll stick with that. Another good way for encoding is doing interleaving or interleaved practice. And what this does is basically jumping around in your practice. A little bit randomly, you can do it more formulaically, it doesn't matter too much, but as long as you're kind of consistently going on to new things. If you do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, it won't stick. It's like when you're wearing a shirt, you no longer feel the shirt on your body unless you consciously think about it. It's because your brain has been getting that same input over and over and over, and it's like, okay, I'm used to that, I don't need to pay attention to that anymore. And this is where when you're doing just mindless repetitions of the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, the brain is no longer thinking, okay, I should pay attention to this. It's just background stimulus that's just firing and doesn't need to be paid attention to. Whereas when you go to a store and you try on a new shirt, immediately you're like, oh, this fabric feels itchy, or this fabric feels soft, or it's too tight or too loose, and you're really aware of those things. That's what interleaving does for us, is you play the thing and you work on it, and your brain's like, okay, this is a new thing, let me think about this, let me engage with this. You go on to something else, oh, this is a new thing, let me engage with this, let me think about this. You go on to something else, thinking about it, and then you come back to the first thing, and now it feels new again, so that you're re-engaging with it. And again, mental engagement is what helps things stick. So that's encoding, to get the information to stick and convince our brain, I actually want to pay attention to this and remember this. Then we have retrieval. One way to do kind of the testing effect in retrieval is to do what I call performance mode. So you're going to pick your passage. It doesn't have to be the whole piece. It could be just a small passage of the piece, or the whole piece is fine too. You're going to play through it in performance mode and go through it. Okay, we only have a minute. I'm going to speed through this. Performance mode. Spacing is a great one as well, where you do it with a timer in between and you get just one shot at one small passage and go through that. So myth number 3, more practicing is the path to confidence performance. Nope. Spacing and retrieval practice helps you to perform confidently. So we can group this into the 3 phases of practice. 1 is related to myth number 1. Make sure that you're doing it correct and not doing bad reps. Number 2, get it encoded, stay mentally engaged in your practice, use contextual interference and desirable difficulty. Phase 3, retrieve it from memory, test your performance, use spacing. This is a fantastic book that goes much more in depth with this than a 30-minute presentation by Dr. Molly Gabrian. There's also a great book by Greg Goodhart. Both of these are really good. This would be a good page to screenshot so that you have this and can look into those later.